I'd like to take a moment to address Medal of Honor recipient Dakota Meyer's recent TikTok video about his perspective on the congresspersons who are veterans who made a statement about following illegal orders.
We've crossed a line in this country that cannot be ignored. We have sitting U.S. elected officials, including Senator Mark Kelly, now telling troops that they can refuse illegal orders. I mean, it sounds reasonable until you realize no legal order has been given.
I'm not going to address the hyper-partisan MAGA conservative rallying cry in the title about a civil war and it's coming from within. I'm not going to address Dakota walking around in a circle in his house, although I am going to do this myself. I'm not going to address the many comments from MAGA bootlickers calling for the arrest, imprisonment, and execution of elected officials for treason. What I am going to talk about is Dakota Meyer's assertion that troops should not get confused about the message, that troops should remember their asses on the line and that they'll be hung out to dry for refusing to obey orders. Dakota starts off by saying that it sounds reasonable until you realize that no illegal order has been given. I'll cover that in a second. Dakota, there's a reason people make fun of Marines as being crayon eaters. Considering that you ran full tilt boogie into MAGA world and you were dumb enough to sleep with Sarah Palin's daughter, knock her up and turn her into a dependa, it comes as no surprise that you're running your mouth about this subject. Now, first and foremost, literally everyone who wore a uniform is aware that every installation and every unit and every chain of command will post advisories and memorandums on policies. They do this in advance of things to get ahead of something or to just advise their troops. We even do things like have safety briefings before long weekends. You know, don't drink and drive, don't marry a stripper, don't impregnate a Palin. We do this to educate our troops and to continually reinforce things to them because troops don't always make good decisions. As a former NCO, I can assure you, I can tell my soldiers every day, don't drink and drive, call Big Sarge instead, and there'll be that one dumbass who goes to the club, gets drunk, and gets busted driving drunk. And I can tell my Joes every day, hey, don't stick your dick in crazy. And they'll still impregnate the daughter of a Fox News personality. Bristol Palin, for example, herself a reality TV star who is best known as Teen Mom and Teen Mom 2. So Democratic Party politicians who are also veterans advising troops that they don't have to follow illegal orders isn't to say that illegal orders have already been given. It's a warning. It's an advisory. It's a cautionary reminder. You know, like a safety briefing. I also want to point out that your assertion, Dakota, that troops should follow orders no matter what, is the same type of shit that we heard from Nazis at Nuremberg. I was just following orders was a rejected defense at the Nuremberg trials. And in fact, that's where the term came from, Nuremberg defense. The courts affirmed that individuals are accountable for their own conduct and have a moral and legal obligation to refuse clearly unlawful orders. That wasn't the first time that the defense has been used. In 1801, the Flying Fish incident involved the capture of a Danish vessel named the Flying Fish by Captain Little of the United States Navy under orders from the president to seize ships sailing to or from French ports. The Flying Fish was sailing from, not to, a French port, which was outside the legal authority granted by Congress. The Supreme Court ruled that Captain Little was liable for damages because he executed an illegal command that contradicted the law passed by Congress. The defense of I was only following orders was rejected because an order from the president that contradicts congressional law is illegal, and obeying such an order does not excuse unlawful actions. The court emphasized that the executive branch cannot override the legislative branch authority to make laws, and Captain Little's actions constituted a trespass of that. The just following orders defense also did not work for Army Lieutenant William Calley when he defended his actions during the My Lai massacre in Vietnam. Following orders does not relieve a soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine of responsibility, particularly if a moral choice is possible. When Lieutenant Calley said that the military taught him that all orders are to be assumed to be legal and that your job is to carry out any order given, that defense was soundly rejected. I think Dakota Meyer knows exactly why military veterans turned politicians are making a statement about following illegal orders. I think Dakota Meyer is relying on his quote-unquote star power and the prestige of being a Medal of Honor recipient to push a MAGA agenda. Dakota knows, as well as the rest of us veterans, that congressional military veterans are warning troops about following illegal orders to remind them of their oath to the Constitution, not to a specific leader. They're rightly concerned that MAGA political rhetoric could undermine the legal principle that service members must refuse orders that violate the law, which is a duty that they must uphold. This is because disobeying an unlawful order is required by military law. There's a very real concern that troops could be further weaponized against the American public, against its citizens. National Guard deployments into cities that didn't ask to be occupied, using the military to support operations by government agencies against people whose skin isn't white and who have names like Jose, Maria, Ernesto, Juana. The core legal concept that these congressional lawmakers invoked is correct. Military personnel must not carry out blatantly unlawful actions, and their oath is to the Constitution. But the legal standard is narrow, it's not broad. Now, I may draw fire from people on the left for saying this, but it does need to be said. Unlawful orders are not simply orders someone dislikes or finds questionable. Just because you don't like Trump and think he's dangerous doesn't mean that orders are unlawful. An unlawful order must involve clear violations of U.S. or international law, such as intentionally targeting civilians or committing acts explicitly prohibited by statute. A lawful order that may be controversial, politically fraught, or later judged unwise is not unlawful under the UCMJ. Au contraire, mon frere. Clearly that nuance was lost on Dakota Meyer, who seems to just be suggesting that every order is always lawful, which was the defense employed by Lieutenant Calley when he was tried for murdering Vietnamese civilians at the My Lai hamlet. So that leads me to, well, how do I know what's a lawful order and what's not? Now, as someone who's deployed overseas during the global war on terror and has seen firsthand what people can do to each other during a war, I know that a lot of us are really well trained on how to deliver death when it's shooting rifles or shooting big stuff like tanks, artillery, missiles, whatever. And usually we like to think that we're only engaging combatants, but not always. And sometimes a plan of action can potentially get into gray areas. That's why units have JAG liaisons or military lawyers. Everyone who served knows about JAG somehow. And I don't just mean the TV show. JAG makes sure that units aren't doing illegal shit. U.S. Southern Command oversees the lethal strikes on alleged drug smuggling boats near Venezuela. The senior military lawyer for JAG at U.S. Southern Command in Miami, a Marine colonel named Paul Meyer, raised his legal concerns back in August before strikes began in September that this may not be legal. However, he was overruled. Since September 2nd, the U.S. has killed 82 people in 21 strikes on small vessels that the U.S. claims were transporting drugs bound for the United States. In only one instance has it been publicly confirmed that a destroyed vessel was transporting drugs. But here's the thing. Despite Trump claiming that people on these boats are extraordinarily violent cartel members, there's no proof. You can't just say, oh, he's violent, and then kill someone. That's not how due process works. Furthermore, international law says that the military cannot kill civilians unless they pose an imminent threat of violence, even if they're engaging in criminal activity. And being ordered to do so is an unlawful order. If you believe in the justice system, those people should be arrested, tried in a court of law, convicted, and sentenced. And none of them, oh, by the way, would be sentenced to the death penalty because that's not a capital crime. So for all of you soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines out there who are watching Medal of Honor recipient Dakota Meyer run his mouth on the internet, all I'm going to say is this administration is going to come to an end at some point. And probably sooner rather than later, the opposition party will control the Senate and the House. And when that day comes, when the Trump administration can no longer protect you, and that's if they even bother to do so. When they can't protect you, the Nuremberg defense won't protect you either. Remember your oath. Think about what I said. And I mean, actually think about it. Don't just reflexively agree or disagree based on your confirmation bias and or your political leanings. That's my time for today. Big Sarge, out here.
And now it's time for the throw punch!
Fucking Dakota Meyer got me wandering around my house doing this shit after I just spent 3 whole ass days wandering around fucking Washington, D.C., walking everywhere. And now I'm in my own house, in my own living room, because Dakota Meyer wanted to cut a video of his salty ass fucking doing this number here. Look.